I was still holding a bag of melting groceries when the woman at the bank asked me why I had ignored the final foreclosure notice. For a second, I honestly thought she had confused me with someone else. The office smelled faintly like coffee and printer ink, and there was a little ceramic plant on the edge of her desk that looked too cheerful for the words coming out of her mouth. Outside the window behind her, people were walking past in heavy winter coats, carrying shopping bags, and talking into their phones like the world was perfectly normal. Mine wasn't. "I think there's been a mistake," I told her quietly. She looked down at the papers in front of her, then back at me, with the kind of careful expression people use when they already know they're about to hurt you. "Mrs. Carter," she said softly, "your husband has been restructuring these loans for years." Years. The word hit me harder than the foreclosure itself. My fingers tightened around the grocery bag until I could feel cold water dripping from a package of frozen vegetables onto my wrist. I remember staring at my husband's signature across the paperwork, the same signature I'd seen on birthday cards, school permission slips, Christmas tags. Only this time it was attached to debts I had never heard of. The woman kept talking, but her voice started sounding far away. Second mortgage delinquent accounts, consolidation loans, missed payments. I sat there trying to understand how a life could collapse without making any noise. Because if you had looked at us from the outside, we were ordinary in the safest possible way. We had been married for 12 years. We had 2 children who still argued over cereal in the mornings and left socks under the couch cushions. My husband Daniel grilled hamburgers on Sundays even in cold weather, standing outside in his old gray sweatshirt with smoke curling around him, while music played softly through the kitchen window. We weren't rich, we weren't glamorous, but I thought we were stable. That word feels almost embarrassing now. Every Friday night, Daniel would sit at the kitchen table with his laptop and a yellow legal pad. He called it handling the bills. I never questioned it because he always sounded calm, confident, like a man who knew exactly where the ground was beneath his feet. "Everything's under control," he used to say. And I believed him. I think trust sometimes dies slowly, long before you realize it's bleeding. When I got home from the bank that afternoon, the house smelled like cinnamon because our daughter had burned toast trying to make an after-school snack. Daniel was standing at the sink rinsing dishes, humming under his breath like it was any other Tuesday. He turned around and smiled when he saw me. That smile almost broke me. "You okay?" he asked. I looked at him standing there with dish soap bubbles still clinging to his hands, and for one strange second, I wanted to protect him from the truth I had just learned. That's the part nobody talks about. Even after betrayal, love doesn't disappear on command. I set the groceries on the counter carefully. "I went to the bank today," I said. The humming stopped. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just enough. His shoulders stiffened before his face did. And that tiny pause told me more than words ever could. The kids were upstairs laughing at something on television. I could hear the floor creaking beneath their feet. Somewhere outside, a dog barked twice and then went quiet. Daniel dried his hands slowly on a kitchen towel. "What bank?" he asked. I stared at him. Not because of the question, because of how carefully he asked it, like a man testing ice. And suddenly, I remembered all the small moments I had ignored over the years. Tiny things, forgettable things, the kind of details you brush aside because marriage trains you to explain away discomfort. The first time something felt wrong had happened almost a year earlier at a grocery store, 15 minutes from our house. My card had been declined buying milk, cereal, and frozen pizza. I remember feeling embarrassed because there was a line behind me, and the cashier kept trying not to look annoyed. "Oh, that happens sometimes," Daniel had said later with an easy laugh. "Fraud protection. The bank flags random stuff." He kissed the side of my forehead while unpacking groceries, and I let myself feel foolish for even worrying. But later that same night, I noticed him standing by the front door before sunrise, waiting for the mail truck. Not casually. Nervously. The moment the mail landed through the slot, he grabbed it so quickly, one envelope ripped down the middle. "What's that?" I asked from the hallway. "Nothing important," he said. His voice sounded normal. His hands didn't. I should have listened to that feeling then. But life has a way of drowning out warning signs. There's always homework to help with, laundry to fold, dinner to make, bills to pay. Ordinary life can hide extraordinary lies. A few months later, I woke up around 2 in the morning and realized Daniel wasn't in bed. The house was dark except for the blue glow coming from downstairs. I walked quietly toward the kitchen and stopped halfway down the hallway when I heard his voice. Soft, panicked. "Please," he whispered into the phone, "just give me another month." I froze. There was something in his tone I had never heard before. Fear. Real fear. I stayed hidden beside the hallway wall, listening to the refrigerator hum while rain tapped gently against the windows. "I'm trying," he said. "I said I'm trying." Then silence. He rubbed both hands over his face before finally noticing me standing there. For a second, neither of us moved. "Who was that?" I asked. "Work stuff." His answer came too quickly. I remember staring at him in the dim kitchen light. His coffee mug sat untouched beside him, steam long gone cold. "You look exhausted," I said quietly. "I'm fine." That word again. Fine. People can hide entire disasters inside ordinary words. The strange thing is, after that night, Daniel became even more affectionate. He started bringing home flowers for no reason. He insisted we take a weekend trip to the mountains, even though money suddenly seemed tight. At first, it felt romantic. Then it felt desperate. During dinner at a little restaurant near the cabin we rented, our son was talking excitedly about wanting a dog, while snow drifted softly outside the windows. Daniel smiled and nodded at all the right moments, but I noticed his eyes kept dropping toward his phone under the table. His thumb moved quickly across the screen. "Transfer completed." I only saw the words for half a second before he tilted the phone away. "You working right now?" I asked lightly. "Just checking something." He forced a smile, but the smile never reached his eyes. Later that night, I woke up and found him sitting alone on the edge of the bed, staring into darkness. The digital clock beside him glowed 3:14 a.m. "You okay?" I whispered. He turned so fast, it startled me. "Yeah," he said immediately. Then he reached for my hand and held it tightly. Too tightly. Like someone afraid of drowning. "Stay with me, because what happens next changed everything." The next few months felt strange in ways I couldn't fully explain. Not dramatic. Just wrong. Daniel started volunteering to handle every piece of mail before I could touch it. If the phone rang and I picked it up first, he'd glance toward me too quickly. Sometimes I'd walk into a room and he'd close his laptop before I could see the screen. And every single time, he had a reasonable explanation. That's what made it so dangerous. Reasonable lies are harder to detect. One Saturday afternoon, I was cleaning out the garage while Daniel took the kids to a basketball game. The garage smelled like dust, motor oil, and old cardboard. Rain tapped steadily against the roof while I sorted through bins filled with Christmas decorations and half-empty paint cans. I was looking for batteries when I noticed an envelope shoved behind a stack of old wood panels. It was thick. Too thick. At first I thought it might be old tax paperwork. Then I saw the red letters. Past due. My stomach dropped so suddenly I had to sit down on the cold concrete floor. Inside were loan notices, overdue payment warnings, and account statements I had never seen before. Some of them were crumpled like they had been hidden in a hurry. One paper mentioned a second mortgage. Another listed credit card balances so high, I honestly thought there had to be a printing error. Then I saw the dates. Not months. Years. The oldest notice was almost 11 years old. I remember staring at that number while rainwater dripped steadily outside the garage door. 11 years. Almost our entire marriage. My hands started shaking so badly the papers slipped from my lap onto the floor. I kept waiting for my brain to explain everything away. Maybe identity theft? Maybe paperwork confusion? Maybe anything except the truth slowly forming in my chest. When Daniel got home later that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the envelope in front of me. The kids had gone upstairs. The house felt painfully quiet. He stopped the second he saw the papers. I watched all the color leave his face. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I asked the only thing my mind could hold on to. "What is this?" Daniel stared at the floor. "It's complicated." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because that sentence felt insultingly small compared to what I was holding in my hands. "Is this real?" I asked. He rubbed both palms against his jeans like he suddenly didn't know what to do with his hands. "Yes." Just one word. Quiet. Heavy. And somehow worse than yelling. I sat there listening to the clock tick above the stove while my entire understanding of our life started rearranging itself. "How much?" I whispered. Daniel closed his eyes. "I don't know exactly anymore." That was the moment. Fear became something solid. Not because of the money. Because of the exhaustion in his voice. Like he had been carrying this secret so long, it had started eating him alive. Over the next week, tiny details from the past began returning to me differently. The canceled vacations, the times he insisted we couldn't replace the car yet, the way he sometimes sat alone in the dark living room after everyone else had gone to sleep. I had mistaken stress for responsibility. But responsibility doesn't hide. One night, after the kids were asleep, I stood outside our bedroom door, listening to the shower running. Steam drifted softly beneath the frame. And for the first time in 12 years, I realized I didn't fully know the man inside that room. That thought hurt more than the dead itself. The next morning, Daniel left early for work without eating breakfast. After he drove away, I opened his desk drawer looking for answers I wasn't even sure I wanted anymore. What I found was worse. There were unopened collection letters stacked beneath old receipts, notices from banks, final warnings, legal documents, and tucked between them was a notebook. Just a plain black notebook. Inside were handwritten numbers, payment plans, interest rates, and dates stretching back over a decade. Page after page after page, like a map of a secret life. Then I saw one line written near the bottom of a page. "Don't tell Claire until I fix it." I stared at my own name until the letters blurred. Fix it. That's what he had told himself all these years. Not confess it. Not share it. Fix it alone. And somehow that made me feel even lonelier. That evening, Daniel came home carrying takeout from my favorite restaurant. As if food could soften truth. We sat across from each other while the kids laughed upstairs at a movie. Finally, he looked at me and said quietly, "You deserve to know everything." And I realized whatever came next was going to change our family forever. Stay with me, because what happens next changed everything. Daniel started talking around midnight. The kitchen light above the stove was the only light on in the house, casting everything in a pale yellow glow. Outside, the neighborhood was silent, except for wind brushing softly against the trees. He looked smaller, somehow, sitting there. Older. "I never meant for it to get this bad," he said. That sentence was the beginning of the collapse. It started 12 years earlier, before our wedding, when Daniel lost money trying to help a friend launch a business. He took out a loan to cover the loss because he was too ashamed to tell anyone. Then came another loan to cover the first one. Then credit cards. Then refinancing. Every time things got worse, he convinced himself he could repair the damage before I noticed. "I thought I was protecting you," he whispered. I remember looking at him across the table while the refrigerator hummed steadily behind us. Protecting me. By building an entire marriage on hidden panic. "There's more," he said. And somehow I already knew there would be. Over the years, he had secretly borrowed against the house multiple times. He had moved balances between cards, hidden overdue notices, and delayed payments until the interest buried us deeper. At one point, he had even withdrawn money from our children's college savings, hoping he could replace it before anyone noticed. He never did. I felt physically cold hearing that. Not angry at first. Just cold. Like every memory in our home suddenly had a shadow behind it. "All those years," I whispered. Daniel stared down at his hands. "I kept thinking next month would be the month I fixed everything." "But you never told me." His eyes filled slowly. "I was afraid you'd leave." Silence settled between us after that. Not dramatic silence. Just devastating. I could hear the dishwasher running softly in the background. Somewhere upstairs, one of the kids turned over in bed and the floor creaked gently. Ordinary sounds. Inside an unrecognizable life. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just sat there staring at the man I had trusted most in the world. And the strangest part was this. He looked terrified, too. Like he had spent 12 years running from a storm that had finally caught him. Around 2 a.m, I stood at the kitchen sink while Daniel cried quietly behind me. I had never seen him cry before. Not when his father died. Not when he lost jobs. Not even during the birth of our children. But now his shoulders shook so slightly I almost missed it. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. Over and over. The words stopped sounding like language after a while. I went upstairs eventually and sat beside our sleeping daughter. Moonlight spilled softly across her blankets. Her breathing was slow and peaceful. I remember touching her hair and wondering how many nights Daniel had stood awake carrying this secret while we all slept safely around him. That thought complicated everything. Because betrayal is easier to hate when the other person feels cruel. Daniel didn't feel cruel. He felt broken. The next few days passed in a blur of phone calls, paperwork, and quiet devastation. We learned the house might still be salvageable if we moved quickly, but it would require selling things, restructuring debt, and admitting the truth to people we had spent years pretending everything was fine around. One afternoon, I found Daniel asleep on the couch, still wearing his work clothes. A collection notice had slipped from his hand onto the floor. I stood there staring at him, at the familiar lines of his face, at the gray beginning to appear near his temples, and I realized something that terrified me. I no longer knew where love ended and pity began. That night, we finally told the kids a softened version of the truth. Not everything, just enough. Our son looked confused. Our daughter asked if we were losing the house. Daniel couldn't answer her. So I did. "I don't know yet." Her little face fell so quietly it nearly shattered me. Afterward, Daniel sat alone at the dining room table long after everyone went upstairs. I watched him from the hallway without speaking. For years, I had mistaken silence for peace. Now I understood. Silence can also be fear. And some secrets don't explode when they're revealed. They simply drain the warmth out of everything around them. Stay with me, because what happens next changed everything. The strange thing about surviving betrayal is that life keeps asking you to do ordinary things anyway. The morning after we told the children, I still had to pack lunches. Still had to wash towels. Still had to answer a text from another parent asking if our daughter could attend a birthday party that weekend. Meanwhile, our entire life felt like cracked glass beneath my feet. Daniel and I started meeting with financial advisors and attorneys. I sold jewelry, my grandmother left me. We canceled vacations. We had planned for months. Daniel picked up weekend shifts wherever he could. And slowly, people started finding out. Not because we announced it, because hardship leaks. My sister noticed first. "You've seemed tired lately," she said over coffee one afternoon. I almost lead. Then I looked down at my untouched cup and realized I was exhausted from protecting secrets that weren't even mine. So I told her, not every detail, just enough. I watched shock move slowly across her face. "But you trusted him," she whispered. That sentence stayed with me for days. Because trust is what makes betrayal hurt differently. If a stranger lies to you, it wounds your pride. When someone you built a life beside lies to you for years, it changes your relationship with reality itself. After that, things between Daniel and me became strangely polite. Careful. Like two people learning how to stand near broken glass without cutting themselves. We still shared a bed, but sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and stare at the ceiling, listening to the distance between our breathing. One evening, Daniel came home carrying groceries and paused in the doorway. "I know you look at me differently now," he said quietly. The honesty in his voice almost hurt more than the lies had. I set down the dish towel in my hands. I don't know how not to. He nodded once. No argument. No defense. Just acceptance. That was the hardest part. Not the debt. Not the paperwork. Not even the fear. It was realizing trust doesn't usually disappear in one dramatic moment. It erodes slowly, quietly. Then one day you wake up beside someone you love and realize you no longer feel emotionally safe with them. Months passed. We managed to keep the house, though barely. Every room inside it felt different afterward. The kitchen where we laughed, the couch where we watched movies, the bedroom where Daniel whispered promises into darkness while hiding truths I never imagined. Nothing looked changed, but everything felt changed. Sometimes I would catch Daniel watching me carefully when he thought I wasn't looking, like he was waiting to see whether forgiveness might eventually appear on my face. The truth is, I still don't fully know what forgiveness means. People imagine it arrives all at once like a movie ending. But real forgiveness feels uneven. Some mornings I would remember the man who packed lunches and held my hand during funerals and stayed awake with sick children. Other mornings, all I could see were hidden envelopes and secret signatures. Both versions were real. That's what made it so painful. One rainy evening, almost a year later, I stood alone on our front porch, watching water collect along the curb. Inside the house, I could hear Daniel helping our son with homework. His voice sounded warm, familiar, human. And I realized something I wish someone had told me years earlier. The most dangerous lies are not always told by cruel people. Sometimes they're told by frightened people who convince themselves secrecy is love. But secrets grow. They spread into walls and conversations and quiet moments until eventually nobody inside the house can breathe properly anymore. If you're watching this alone tonight, I want to ask you something. Could you ever fully trust someone again after discovering they had hidden an entire second life behind ordinary mornings and family dinners? If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe so you never miss a story. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, you are never alone.